Hello, my friends. It's Andy Falco Jimenez coming to you live from Yorba Linda, California for the Andy Falco Show. And we're going to be talking about a few things here, but mainly about the Planned Parenthood and CTA, the NEA, which is a cabal of essentially Democrats that are they actually have been succeeding in destroying our public school system, destroying our children. And when parents are fighting back, they combine their efforts to overturn the will of the people within a community, which is what's happening in the city of Orange, in the OUSD, the Orange Unified School District, where they're attempting to recall a minor in Ledesma who are school board members and using parents and teachers, a few parents, not real parents. They're probably using students from Cal State Fullerton, from Chapman University, from other local universities to pretend that they live in the community when they don't, because that's what they've done here in the Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District. Had them speak at school board meetings and pretend they're part of the community when in fact they're not. They're just cheerleaders for the teachers unions and Planned Parenthood. So I'm going to get into a little bit of that in just a minute. I'm going to explain why and try to piece it together for you. Because you know what? I've noticed that, there's a group of us parents here in the Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District, in the Chino Valley Unified School District, and of course the Orange Unified School District and Temecula Unified School District that have come together. We understand the role that Planned Parenthood and the teachers unions play in the destruction of our schools. And we have been deep into it, immersed into it, I would say, over the last several years since the pandemic. And I think sometimes can tend to believe that everybody knows this stuff and understands what's happening, what the truth is. When it comes to these issues, whether it's LGBTQ or masking or vaccines or, closing down the schools, whether boys should compete, men should compete in girls' sports, do all these things that we know who it is. We know it's not real parents. We know it's not good teachers. It's these cabals of organizations that have taken control for the last several decades of our schools who are actually involved. And so we forget that sometimes we have to kind of bring it down to a more educational pieces to help people understand, because I was knocking on doors for Madison, a minor, just a few weeks ago, trying to inform the community there in Orange about what's happening in their school district. And you knock on the door and people answer the door, and they're working class people. Some of them are fairly, well off, and some of them are, your average citizen. And you begin to talk to them about what's going on. And they go, "What's happening in our school district? What are you talking about?" And I go, "Do you have kids?" Who goes, "Yeah, we do, but I don't understand what you're talking about." Or we bring up the fact that, that has to do with the school board, and they go right away to politics. And they're looking at from a federal politics standard, and it's somewhat different. And so, of course, nobody trusts politicians per se. But when you get into the school board area, are they politicians? In the sense they are, but they're parents that have gotten involved in many cases, or their grandparents that have gotten involved. And so it's slightly different. It's supposed to be nonpartisan, but in fact, we know that it's partisan. And so when you begin to tell them about these things, they go, they will say, "I had no idea this was going on." When it comes to the teachers unions, I'm assuming that you're talking about teachers. But when you're talking about teachers union, you're not talking about teachers, because I talk to many teachers who say, "I am pressured to be in the teachers union. I don't like being in the teachers union. I don't even like what they stand for." And I hear this all the time from teachers. And so the teachers unions don't necessarily represent teachers. They do represent the teachers who are lost, that have lost their way in regard to what it means to educate as opposed to indoctrinate. They have come to believe that maybe indoctrination is education. And we're here to tell you as parents that it's not. So let me get to a couple of these things really important that are important first, and that is sponsors for our show, and that is LifeWise. Make sure you go to livelifewise.tv. The link is in the description. Go there and you'll find some great supplements like Restore. Restore has helped me with a bad knee because it helps with inflammation. When I'm taking Restore, I feel little to no pain and you can go back to doing whatever it was I was doing when I was in my 20s or 30s. So that is one of the great products that they have. And then if you want to broadcast about politics, about maybe a devotional with your Christian faith, maybe you are a photographer, and you want to tell people about how to be a better photographer, you can use StreamYard to do that and go live on all the platforms: Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, X, Rumble, Instagram. You can do it all using StreamYard. So that's a great platform. And then our ministry is resurrectministry.com. Go to resurrectministry.com and you'll see our other show called the Living Fearless Devotional, which we do on a semi-regular basis throughout the week. But go to Resurrect Ministry to learn more about that. All right. So back to what we're here to talk about. So I'm going to read an article really quick. And it doesn't matter what district you're in, if you're in the, LAUSD, if you are in San Bernardino, if you're in another state, you have to understand what it is I'm going to be telling you, because what's affecting OUSD is affecting all school districts throughout the nation. Not necessarily the California Teachers Association, which I'm going to talk about in great detail, but whatever it is that's your state teachers union. You have the NEA, the National Educators Association, which is the overall national teachers union. You got Randy Weingarten, who's a part of the American, I forget what the name of the union but it's another teachers union, which is even I would say larger and more encompassing, because it also encompasses, if I'm not mistaken, employees that have a connection to education. So she's in charge of even a larger body, but they're all connected. They are all part of the Democratic Party. Whether it's Randy Weingarten's union or the NEA or the CTA or the APLE, which is the Association of Placentia Linda Educators Union, which is the Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School Districts Union, whatever it is, they're all connected. There's no distinction. And I would venture to say, and although I can't find proof yet, but I've been investigating, the Planned Parenthood is also connected. Now, they may be separate as far as organizations, but they believe in the same thing, which I'm going to show you in just one moment, how they have the same goals in mind, even though they're separate organizations, and they're very involved. The Planned Parenthood organization is very involved in education, especially when it comes to California's education, extremely involved. I'll show you that in just 1 minute. So no matter where you're at in the nation watching this, I guess what I would even say, even in Canada, that you got to understand that there's people in the liberal sense of the word, in the progressives, that hate your children. They hate families. Their job is to take over the schools, the public schools, so they can indoctrinate kids to push their agenda. They have little interest in actual education. And I will show you proof of that by the time we're done. All right. So first, this article that just came out, which kind of prompted me to make sure and get this out today. This article in what is called the Voice of Orange County, which they are not the Voice of Orange County, by the way. But it talks about this recall that's happening in the OUSD, the Orange Unified School District. And it says voters in the Orange Unified School District will decide if they want to remove school board trustees Rick Ledesma and Madison Minor from office in the March 5th primary election. A group of parents, teachers, some teachers, and community members. The only community members are those that are involved in the CTA and their local teachers union there in Orange Unified School District, have launched efforts to start a recall election against the two trustees after the board called a special meeting in January 2023 to abruptly fire Superintendent Gunn Marie Hansen and put an assistant superintendent on paid leave. Now, that is somewhat true. This did prompt it, but they were going to do it anyway. They just needed an excuse. And what they're talking about here is, and here are the two. First, let me show you the two superintendents. It's Madison Minor, an amazing mom of two children, I believe. I could be wrong. Rick Ledesma, I'm not sure how many kids he has in the school district or if he does at all. But these are two patriots who care about education, about parents' rights, and they want kids to be educated, not indoctrinated. And they are the ones who are in the crosshairs of this teachers union and Planned Parenthood. And just to kind of give you an idea what's going on is that a parent sent a public records request, a PRA, to OUSD, which was returned with over 600 pages of details providing corruption by Superintendent Hansen and Assistant Superintendent Corella. Since January, the board minority and union activists have claimed that the firing of Superintendent Hansen and the paid leave of Assistant Superintendent Corella were unsupported, and most recently that they were grounds for a radical recall. The details presented via the PRA show actual fraud. I'm going to say it again, actual fraud and negligence on behalf of Superintendent Hansen and Assistant Superintendent Corella, providing solid grounds for their termination. And that is really important, is because they want you to believe that the Ledesma and Minor just came in and said, you know what, these people don't believe in what we believe in, and so we're firing them. No, there was actual corruption, 600 pages of proof of actual corruption, and that is why they were removed. We have here at PYLUSD superintendents, a number of them, not just the lead superintendent, but the underlings of our superintendent, who were truly incompetent. The head superintendent, Matthews, that we just recently had, did not know what type of government we had, and he was a history teacher. And he believed that our government was a democracy, when in fact it's a republic, a constitutional republic. And when questioned on the dais of one of our school, he admitted that he did not know. Essentially, he said, "No, it's not. It's a democracy," and we had to point out that he was wrong. And so I could go on with the incompetency, but they had to be removed because of incompetency, not because they just simply didn't like them, but because they were incompetent. And our grade standards were not being met by our students within our school district, so they had to be removed. And that's just the job of the school board. In the school board at OUSD, they found corruption, 600 pages of proof of corruption, and they were simply removed, just like anybody else from any other job would be removed. When you see that one of your employees is corrupt and not using funds correctly and using city property or company property for personal use, they get fired. Everybody does. And that's simply what happened here. And they have all the proof that they needed to do that. And so that is the truth. This article in the Orange County, what do I call it again? Voice of Orange County is simply lying to their readers when they say, well, when they support the views of the Planned Parenthood and Teachers Union, who has organized this recall. It isn't a bunch of families and parents. Again, there may be some lost parents who believe that the state should be able to take your children and take off their testicles and their breasts without your knowledge and without your permission. They believe that. There are some parents but it's very few. I bet you if you were to go out to Orange and knock on any door that has children and say, hey, do you think that it's right for Gavin Newsom to be able to take your children without your knowledge, kidnap them essentially, and provide medical services to them, no matter what it is? And I'm gathering that you would find 99% of the parents in the city of Orange and in Yorba Linda and Placentia and Walla Walla, Washington, that would say, no, you're not taking my child anywhere to do anything. You're not taking them to give them aspirin, much less take them to have their testicles cut off. So here we go. I want to explain something, that the attack on these two individuals, Minor and Ledesma, in the Orange Unified School District is an attack from Planned Parenthood and the CTA, California Teachers Association, and of course all their minions of all the other teachers unions that are in the state. And I want to first address Planned Parenthood, things you need to know about Planned Parenthood. And one of these things, and there's a lot, and I just narrowed it down to a few, or else the show would be 2 hours long, is that you must understand Planned Parenthood is the largest, best funded, and most profitable 501c3 in human history. The largest, best funded, and most profitable in human history. Planned Parenthood is the largest provider of comprehensive sex education in the United States. They control and have written all the sex education that is pushed in to our public schools, and which essentially begins the indoctrination of kids to understand that they should believe that it's okay to have sex at an early age, that contraception is something that should be given to children when they're very small, and then if they somehow make an error, that abortion is the first option you should look at. And so they make sure that they get their sex education in the public schools so that they can have future customers at Planned Parenthood for going there to get their contraception, to go there to get their abortions, to go there to get whatever treatments that are related to pregnancy. And so it is a way of getting future customers. And then lastly here, Planned Parenthood is now the second largest provider of cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers in the United States of America. Did you know that? Did you know that? All right. So when it's coming to the indoctrination of sexual issues, whether it's LGBTQ or early look at how to get pornographic books and teachings in the school libraries, all the way down to elementary school, this is all being pushed by Planned Parenthood, because again, you're creating future customers for Planned Parenthood. A company that did this early on and did it effectively is Apple, right? You remember that, oh man, I hate it when people say right in the middle of a sentence. I'm going to stop. If somebody reach out and slap me if I do that again. When Apple wanted, probably was in one of their early corporate meetings, Steve Jobs and other people, when they were trying to get these computers, how can we ensure that in the future we will have customers? Because the PC at the time was the dominant computer in the world. They had the very smart idea of, well, let's begin to indoctrinate the children to use Apples by giving them to schools throughout the United States and quite possibly other countries. I'm not quite sure of this, but they began to push these Macintosh computers, Apple computers early on, and give them away to these school districts, or give them for a very inexpensive price, so that kids began to use Apple products early on. And what do we see today? Apple is one of the largest, most profitable businesses in the world. I believe that they have no debt and are cash fat because of this decision to indoctrinate children early on and create a movement where they would prefer usually Apple products over any other product. And that's exactly what Planned Parenthood is doing. They realize, hey, that's the Apple. Apple did a great job of doing that. We need to do the same thing, and they did the same thing with being a part of pushing in sex education, so that it pushed children towards Planned Parenthood. All right, so now let me see. I got a comment here. Hey, Bill, nice to see you. Bill Closet, thank you for sharing blessings, my friend. You're very welcome, Bill. And I have to make that phone call to you or a text message. We need to meet, because I have some things I want to run past you to see about. They have a great horse property here in the Yorba Linda area, where they have stables and they teach kids how to ride. And I believe they have some great programs there for kids and for adults over there at their event. Bill, if you want to, feel free to put any information about your stables that you want to put in there. If you want to, don't have to. All right. So back to this. So now we're going to talk. So that was Planned Parenthood. Now let's bring in CTA. So it's CTA, California Teachers Association, the state's largest teachers union, has pumped millions into ballot initiative fights that seem to have little or nothing to do with education. Little or nothing to do with education. Again, they are an arm of the Democratic National Party. In 2022, the CTA contributed $250,000 to Prop 1, a ballot initiative that would enshrine the rights to abortions and contraceptives in the state's constitution. Do you see a connection between CTA and Planned Parenthood? Do you see that connection? Why else would they spend $250,000 to Prop 1 in 2022 with the ballot initiative that would enshrine the rights of abortions and contraceptives in the United States, in California Constitution, in California state constitution? Why? If there's no connection. This is one of the connections. I can't necessarily say, but I guess I can. A direct connection. That is a direct connection, whether you want to believe it or not, between the CTA and the Planned Parenthood. You have two of the most of the richest organizations in the state that believe in the same thing, that are pushing the same thing into our public schools through sex education, sexual indoctrination, pornographic books that lead to promiscuity. You know what I mean? The kids get very sexual. To suddenly turned into Porky Pig. Promiscuity, thank you. And all the issues that lead to sexual confusion, to a deeper interest in sex, that lead them to a lifelong customer of Planned Parenthood, whether they decide that they want to change their sex or simply want to have a lot of sex early on. Do you see this connection that is made early on here between the California Teachers Association and Planned Parenthood? And now you have this slide that says teachers union endorsements are valuable because this is important. Most voters do not see a distinction between the organizations of the teachers union and their local classroom teacher, said Mariano, and I can't remember who that is. I'm so sorry. That was from an article from Politico in 2022. So voters may see the backing of a teachers union as a signal of support from teachers in their own communities. One of the things that I've seen most commonly used as a tactic in school board meetings is that when a speaker would come up and attack the teachers unions, a speaker would then come up who is supportive of the teachers union or a member of the teachers union and say, oh, that person hates teachers. And it's very easy to do that because, as this slide says, or the article says in Politico, is that many people believe in their head. And again, I found this when I was knocking on doors for Madison Minor and Ledesma for no on the recall, is that when you knock on people's doors, there is this idea that the teachers union is the teachers. And you really have to make sure that when you're knocking on doors and talking to people, talking to your friends and neighbors, is that the teachers union is not the teachers. Remember this slide back here that I read to you, is that the state's largest teachers union has pumped millions into ballot initiative fights that seem to have little or nothing to do with education. Little or nothing to do with education. And so the teachers union spend a lot of time on issues that are not related to what is important to teachers in your school, no matter where it's at. And whether it's the NEA, the CTA, or Randy Weingarten's teachers union, no matter who it is, you have to understand that they have very little interest in education. They're more concerned about the Democratic Party, Liberal Party, the progressive parties, initiatives and policies that push their political view and not education. Planned Parenthood, California Teachers Association, and all of the other ones that are below them do not care about education. I know that's a very strong statement. I know that this can rub people the wrong way. I know that people have this idea that the teachers union is the teachers. It is not. I know I have had many teachers who have contacted me out there in the community who have told me, man, I appreciate what you're doing. I can't say anything because I'm part of the teachers union, and they will crucify me. They will destroy my career. They will, and they go on and on and on, talking about how difficult it is to be in a school and not be able to speak out about these very things that I'm talking to you about. So understand this, and you know how to make this clear to everybody you're talking about in the city of Orange, especially as March is approaching for this special election, that you get them to understand why it is they need to say no to the recall, is because the recall is being financed and is being supported only by the organization and the people that are involved in the organization of Planned Parenthood and the California Teachers Association. Now, let me give you an example as to how detrimental it is to go along with Planned Parenthood and California Teachers Association policies when you believe that it has something to do with education, when you are wrongly taking what it is that they want a school or a school district to do in the name of DEI or in the name of CRT or in the name of equity, which is part of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That when it comes to these things, that they and again, I'm going to give you proof right now that it has nothing to do with education. So this article just came out 2 days ago, I believe, from the Center Square in California, which is a publication up in Northern California. And it says a failing California schools test scores continue dropping after spending $250,000 on a program called Woke Kindergarten, which deployed anti-police, anti-capitalism, and anti-Israel messages to advance abolitionist early education and pro-Black and queer and trans liberation. These are all the things that I just told you that Planned Parenthood and California Teachers Association are pushing and support the any bills, any teachings, any programs that they try to push into these schools, a DEI, a curriculum, a CRT curriculum, all involve those things that I just told you about in this woke kindergarten. Deploys all of these anti-police, anti-capitalism, anti-Israel, abolitionists, queer and trans liberation. All these things are from Planned Parenthood and the Teachers Association. Next paragraph. The Woke Kindergarten teacher training and curriculum program, first reported on in the San Francisco Chronicle, was available to all of Glassbrook Elementary's 474 students who most recently fell to new lows of grade level math and English proficiency at 4%, meaning only 4% met the minimum standard and 12% minimum standard of math. So 4% minimum standards of math. So 4% of math reached 4% of students reached the math minimum standard, and 12% of students met English proficiency. So the woke kindergarten, the curriculum that these teachers were given to teach the students had nothing to do with English, math, history. It had to do with wokeness, of indoctrination, of teaching them to hate their country, of teaching them that to hate police, to teaching them to understand, that there's 50 different genders, and that, if you're depressed, then it must mean that you're in the wrong sexual body, that you're in the wrong gender. That is what they focused on. That's what the CTA wants you to focus on. That's what Planned Parenthood wants you to focus on. I just showed you the proof through what it is that they represent and how much money they're putting into these schools and initiatives to make sure that these things get into your schools. And you see the results here is that their education level dropped considerably, down to 4% for math and 12% for English. In the next paragraph, it says, meanwhile, nearby John Muir Elementary adopted a math intervention program that increased math proficiency rate from 15%. So it was low as 50%. And barely higher than Glassbrook's 12%, to more than 50%. So when you bring in actual education, when you get rid of Common Core and bring in non-Common Core, your education increases. What does Planned Parenthood and CTA want? They want Common Core. They're the ones who brought in Common Core. They're the ones who brought in all this nonsense of asking children what their gender was or their pronouns were at the beginning of each school year, to make sure that they could talk about these things in spite of what the parents wanted, and begin hiding things from parents. So when that happens, you see education drop by proof of the school program called Woke Kindergarten. And in a neighboring school, which would simply mean that the demographics are probably very similar, that it's not because they are poorer or richer, or because they are of a different color, or a different kind of demographic from one another, that you have a school in a neighboring community that you actually educate, and their level of education increases up to 50%, not 4% or 12% like they did in the other school with Woke Kindergarten. They increased to 50% when you actually introduced education, which we are doing here locally at a school called Bernardo Yorba, where it's a computer, I forget exactly the name, it's just escaping me. Somebody write it in the comments who's watching. That is a charter school, is probably the best way for me to put it. It's a charter school within the district that is going to be non-Common Core. You're going to see the test scores increase exponentially because of the new program. Last paragraph here of Warwick Kindergarten. A recent Stanford study found reading interventions for the state's 75 worst performing public elementary schools based on scientific phonics-based programs accelerated reading learning by 25%. As a spillover effect, boosted math advancement by 12% relative to students in schools that didn't adopt the programs. So when you bring in education, you increase it by 25%. And because you increase the reading capabilities through phonics-based training, you also thereby impact their ability to learn math, their ability to learn history. Why? Because they know how to read. They read better and faster and understand, because you bring in a phonics-based, education-based, scientific-based education, which just goes to show you that anything that Planned Parenthood or CTA is for, you need to run away from as quickly as possible. Back to our recall. So with this information in mind, you have two people, Madison Miner and John Ledesma. I worked with a guy named John Ledesma. Hold on, let me make sure I get the name right. Rick Ledesma. Sorry, I worked with a lot. John Ledesma, Rick Ledesma, and Madison Miner. You have these two amazing people who are school board members with OUSD, who want to bring in education, science-based education. They want parents' rights. They want to stop the indoctrination. They want to stop Planned Parenthood and California Teachers Association, all their underlings, from indoctrinating children in all of the gender nonsense and all the pronoun nonsense, and bring in science-based education. Because they want to educate kids, they're being attacked by the two largest groups who have more money than God, to do everything they can to crush them. And they are lying. They are standing in front of Targets in the city of Orange. They are standing in front of other stores in the city of Orange, and they are lying to people as they walk through the doors, and having them sign a petition, had them sign a petition to get that, the recall on the ballot. So through their lies, through their money, through the people that are simply part of the Democratic National Committee, because that's where all this funding goes, is that they were able to bring a recall. And you need to understand, through what I hopefully just shared with you, you have a better understanding of why these huge organizations that have a ton of money are able to get something, this type of initiative, on a ballot, but you need to push back with your vote. It costs you nothing to take your ballot and to go and submit a no on the recall for these two school board members in the OUSD. It's extremely important that you understand that this is really important, because if you let's say that you are here in the Placentia Yorba Unified School District, or a neighboring school district, Anaheim, for instance. I think they have 2 or 3 school districts in Anaheim, if I'm not mistaken, that affect them. And I understand that Anaheim is part of also the Placentia Yorba Unified School District. But what happens in OUSD is going to affect us all. If the Planned Parenthood and CTA get a win by getting these two people recalled, then they're not going to stop there. They're going to continue, because they hate what's happening in Placentia Yorba Unified School District. We have a majority of conservative school board members. We have an amazing superintendent by the name of Dr. Alex Chirnis. He has brought in assistant superintendents who are doing an amazing job of carrying on the desire to educate children in the Placentia Yorba Unified School District. They were able to convert the Bernardo Yorba Middle School into a charter school, which is going to have Common Core education, amongst a bunch of other things. Are changing everything in education. That school, by the way, has met the level of the number of children that can attend that school. They've met, and now there's a waiting list. Out of all of the schools in our district, that one is full, and now there is a waiting list to get into that school. That's how much education is desired by the parents. That's why when you read an article that says, well, there's the parents in the Orange Unified School District who want these two recalled, that is not true. It's not. The proof is that because when the parents are educated, when the parents understand what's happening, they go, no, we don't want our kids taken from us because we think they're, because they were born a boy, that they are a boy, because we believe that. We don't believe you can take our kids. We don't believe that you can take my boy and call him, Nancy, because for a day or two he was depressed and you talked him into thinking that he was a girl. No, we believe that our son, who was born a boy, is a boy, and we have a right to make sure that we try to help him through the depression or the issues that he's dealing with, because it obviously is a psychological condition that we need to address from a medical standpoint. Not some teacher who went to Cal State Fullerton for a couple of years and has decided, I know what's best for your child, you don't. And so I'm going to submit a proposal or whatever it is, a memo to the school that we need to take custody of your kid and give it over to the state so that we can begin medical procedures to change their sex to what it is that I believe your son is. And I've talked your son into believing that he's a girl. And so I should be the one that should be better suited to be the parent for that kid, apparently. So no, parents don't believe that. These knucklehead crazy teachers do, that have bought into it. And again, there are a few parents who have bought into it too. I've seen them speak at the school board meeting, but there's only like 2 in our entire school district who have come on a regular basis to speak. They have lost their minds. And so hopefully you understand that you need to get the word out. Everybody that that can vote in the election there. And it's a special election. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it's a special election coming up. I have the ballots there on my desk. It's coming up in March 5th, I believe. Let me look at this article again, because it says in there, yes, March 5th, a primary election. Thank you. In that primary election is this initiative in that area of OUSD. So you need to get the word out to the people that live in that area. They may not even have kids. They may be childless. They can vote no on the recall. If you have, grandparents that live in the OUSD area, they can vote no on the recall. You find anybody who lives in that district area, they all can vote no on the recall. So make sure that you get the word out. Again, I know that some of you are watching this, that you go, what does this matter to me in OU? I don't live in the OUSD. I live in this other place. You need to post on your social media, because you may have a friend that lives in the OUSD, because if this recall passes in OUSD, it will affect you at some point. It affects you as a community member, that these kids who are graduating from these schools are not getting educated. I've talked about this many times on the show, that you will go out into your community and you will go to purchase something at one of the local stores, and you will have a knucklehead kid who went through one of these schools where they've lowered the standards so that you don't necessarily have to even read English. You don't have to necessarily even be able to do math, and yet you can graduate if you just are breathing and happen to make it all the way to 12th grade, because they've lowered the standards so low that you don't have to meet the minimum standards any longer. You just have to show up, and you can graduate. And now that person who doesn't know how to read, write, do math at a grade level is now working in your community. This is why that they're finding that doors are popping off in airplanes. This is why you're finding all kinds of issues that are happening in our military and all these companies around us. Is that because there's nobody to hire? They're having to go out of the country to hire people from other countries, because our education standards have dropped to such a minimum. We can see what's happening in Harvard. We can see what's happening in all these Ivy League schools, is because this is the pool of students that they're getting are students that are not meeting these minimum standards. So I hope this was helpful to some of you. Make sure and take some of this information. Let people know that Planned Parenthood and CTA is controlling everything that has to do with our children. And when they are involved, woke kindergarten is what happens. You have a drop in education, not an increase in education. You have a drop in education anytime the Planned Parenthood, CTA, minions are involved. The cabal of these Democrat organizations is simply destroying our children and our school systems. All right, my friends, again, I hope this was helpful. Make sure and go in the description and visit some of my supporters, and click on the links and just check them out. Maybe you'll know somebody that's interested in some of those things. All right, my friends, love you guys. God bless. I'll talk to you in the next one. Take care. Bye.